do the Gospels contradict each other? And is the death of Jesus fictionalized to mimic the death of Socrates? Today, we are examining this very closely with Dr. Dennis R. MacDonald. Get his book right now. I promise you, it takes a deep dive showing you that there's a literary creation on behalf of the authors of the Gospels to invent Jesus and make him more heroic than the heroes of the past, such as Socrates. Socrates died without fear. He faced it like a man, if you will. Well, Jesus is painted in similar light in the Gospel of Luke. However, that gospel doesn't look like the other Gospels. And if you're serious about checking out what the scholarship has to say on these matters, Dennis R. MacDonald is your guy. Dr. MacDonald, thank you again. Really appreciate you.
This has been a pleasure.
This has been. There are many Christians living in a world that you don't live in on a daily basis, that I see on a daily basis, who want to scream and yell through the internet with cap locks on and say, the Gospels do not contradict the passion narratives, the death narratives of Jesus, his burial, his empty tomb, the whole nine. Those differences are just different camera angles, different witnesses. And if you ever interviewed these witnesses, they take this so serious and literal. If you ever interview these witnesses, they're going to give you different details, especially if it's really true. Where you really should see red flags is if they all told the same story. Then you could say there's a conspiracy or they're conspiring to try and unite on something. But because they're different, this helps prove our case even more that it's true. You're doing something so radically different that it blows the whole rug. Just pull it out and we're all going to fall over. So we're comparing the death of Socrates to the death of Jesus, or really we're comparing the death of Jesus to Socrates, because Socrates already existed for millennia, not really, but centuries. So we're going to be doing that and how this contradicts other narratives.
Well, thank you, Derek. I am not sympathetic to the people that are fundamentalists and require homogenizing the text and saying that there's no conflict between them or meaningful conflict between them, because that means you're not understanding anything about them. Now, my book, Synopses, Epic, and Epic Tragedy and the Gospels, is basically in volume 1 a synopsis of the synoptic gospels, and they're arranged chronologically, not canonically. So you can actually see going across the page, left to right, in English, the development of Jesus' traditions from the Q document to Mark, then to Matthew, and to Luke. And the Markan account of the death of Jesus is influenced by Homer's Iliad and the death of Hector. And the parallels are really quite striking. And in the mini course we put together, we spent a good bit of time on that topic. And that's true also in the book. But if one were to take a look in the synopsis at the very same passages in Mark, and then read across the page and look at what's going on in Luke, you will see that the story of the death of Jesus in Luke is remarkably different. And in some cases, it removes the Hector-like images because the death of Hector is tragic. The death of Socrates is tragic too, but is more noble than the death of a young man and so on. And so many people have noticed, of course, the difference between the Lucan Passion narrative and the Markan one. And I think Luke also knew it from Matthew. And we can look at some evidence for that. But the bigger point is that it's not coming from a different source, as some have thought. It's not coming from an eyewitness who simply was looking at it differently. It's coming from a second century intellectual who's writing some 50 years after the death of Jesus and is wanting to make Jesus's death noble the same way that the death of Socrates was noble. And we're going to read about 3 pages that includes quite a bit of information, both from Plato's understanding of the death and trial of Socrates, and the way that Luke cleverly has recrafted the passion narrative of earlier Gospels to make Jesus compatible to Socrates. So we're reading from page 450 in the synopsis. The Last Supper in Mark consists of 8 verses, about 146 words. Luke's account, however, spans more than 20 verses, about 410 words. That is about 3.5 times as much. Whereas Mark began the Last Supper darkly, with Jesus predicting that one of the 12 would betray him, Luke begins with him saying, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will never again eat it until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God." So he is hopeful about his future after he dies. The result in Luke is a sustained period of Jesus's instruction to the disciples in the form of a symposium, with several similarities to Socrates' last day with his disciples, according to Plato's Phaedo. Mark had fashioned Jesus' agony at Gethsemane after Odysseus' agony in Circe's bedroom, when he learned that he must sail to the end of the earth to summon dead Tiresias from Hades. Luke retained some of Mark's parallels from the epic, as one can see by comparing the 2 Gospels in the synopsis. But his account of Jesus' prayer at Gethsemane removes every vestige of angst from the scene. For example, Luke transfers the motif of agony from Jesus to the disciples who fell asleep, quote unquote, for sorrow. Whereas Jesus falls on the ground in grief in Mark, Jesus kneels, a gesture of dutiful submission as if to royalty. Luke also softens Jesus' request by introducing it with, "if you wish." Like a faithful subordinate, he is willing to do the will of his Father. Mark and Luke both refer to Jesus' death as a cup. Socrates, of course, drank a cup of poison and faced his death with confidence. Read there, would you, Derek? He withdrew.
He withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt and praying said, "Father, if you wish, take this cup from me, but may your will be done, not mine."
Similarly, Socrates greeted his death, welcomed his death. Plato emphasized Socrates' impassivity throughout the Phaedo. For the true philosopher, death is less fearful than for others. Gregory E. Sterling, another scholar, cites Seneca's claim that the circumstances of his death changed Socrates' soul so little that they did not even change his expression. This is how Seneca expressed it, Derek.
To the very end, no one saw Socrates either joyful or sad. In such vagaries of fortune, he was constant.
Although Luke inherited from Mark Jesus' statement of submission to the will of God, Jesus' prayer resonates also with Socrates' statement to Crito, "If it is pleasing to the gods, so be it." In Mark, the Jewish council convicted Jesus of blasphemy and delivered him bound to Pilate. But Luke omitted any reference to his chains. In fact, he is never shackled in Luke, and in this respect, he resembles the dying Socrates. Moreover, Mark is silent about the charges against Jesus, but Luke makes them explicit. So, Derek, here we go. Accusers brought these charges. Socrates is guilty of corrupting the youth.
Jewish authorities began to accuse him and said, "We have found this person perverting our nation."
And by the Greek expression for the accusation is very similar in both. and of not honoring the gods whom the city of Athens honors, but other new deities.
Prohibiting the giving of tribute to Caesar and proclaiming himself to be Messiah, a king.
Those charges against Socrates were so well known that Luke's evoking of them here would be a trigger to see Jesus as a Socratic character. Luke's reader knows that the charges against Jesus are groundless. It was the Jewish authorities who were perverting the people, and even though Jesus was the Messiah, he was not a king in a political sense that could harm Rome. Moreover, the claim that he opposed tribute to Caesar is pernicious, and I refer to other things in the gospel, but I want to go to Xenophon's treatment of the death of Socrates. Luke's Pilate declared Jesus to be innocent of the charges, but the religious authorities insisted that he, like Socrates, was fomenting rebellion with this teaching. Derek, and this is Xenophon defending Socrates.
But they were even more insistent and said, he disturbs the people by teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee as far as this very place. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man were a Galilean. And when he learned that he fell under Herod's authority, he sent him to Herod Antipas, who was in Jerusalem during those days. When Herod saw Jesus, he was overjoyed because for some time he had wanted to see him because of what he had heard about him. He was hoping to see some sign performed by him.
Jesus' hearing before Antipas further demonstrated his innocence, because not even this fox who wanted to kill him in the past found any cause for putting him to death. So Pilate, again, if you would read.
Pilate summoned the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this person as someone who perverted the people, and after examining him before you, I found this person guilty of none of your charges against him, nor did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Behold, nothing punishable by death has been done by him. So I will discipline him and release him." The crowd then asked Pilate to release Barabbas to crucify Jesus.
Xenophon's defense of Socrates in the first book of his Memorabilia begins with the charges against him at the Athenian trial, and he counters, "No one ever saw Socrates do or heard him say anything impious or sacrilegious. As a matter of fact, he avoided ontological speculations and focused on ethics." So here we have an extended quotation from Xenophon.
He always discussed human goals. What is godly? What is ungodly? What is good? What is shameful? What is just? What is unjust? What is self-restraint? What is madness? What is courage? What is cowardice? What is a city? What is a politician? What is government of people? And what is a governor of the people? I'm amazed that the Athenians could ever have been persuaded that Socrates was not conscientious with respect to the gods. He who never said or did anything impious about the gods. Whatever things he said or did were those of someone who in speech and action actually was and should be regarded as most religious.
So Pilate, in saying that Jesus has done nothing wrong, is giving an apology similar to what we find with Xenophon. Luke added to Mark's account of the crucifixion the following famous statement: "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." Even in antiquity, readers differently identified whom Jesus was forgiving. The parallels in the Phaedo point to the Roman soldiers. The Roman soldiers were merely carrying out their orders. They did not know what they were doing. According to Plato, it fell to a lackey to administer the hemlock to Socrates. On delivering the poison, he said that he would not blame the philosopher if he were furious with him, but he was grateful that Socrates understood who was at fault. "You are angry with me. You are not angry with me, but with others, for you know who are truly guilty." That is the Athenian votes, the men. The man then left in tears. Socrates bade him farewell and told the others, Derek,
how courteous this person is. The whole time he has come to me, occasionally has talked with me, and has been the most agreeable of men. Now he weeps for me so nobly.
Jesus and Socrates harbored no hostility for those responsible for carrying out their executions. The guilt belonged to others, and that doesn't appear in another gospel. Mark and Matthew both state that the two criminals crucified with Jesus reviled him, but in Luke, one of them rebuked the other.
Do you not fear God? After all, you are under the same judgment. We quite justly, for we are receiving punishments appropriate for what we have done. But this man has done nothing wrong. He says, Jesus, remember me when you enter your kingdom. He said to him, truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise.
The temporal reference in Jesus' response is not some indefinite future, but today. And the spatial reference is not to an earthly kingdom, but to paradise, an idyllic heavenly garden, the peaceful abode of the righteous dead. In other words, Jesus expects immediately after his death to find eternal bliss today, even though he's not going to be raised for 3 days. Luke's Jesus thus resembles Plato's Socrates again, who spoke to his followers at length about the delights his soul would enjoy as soon as he left the body. He himself summed up his teachings by saying that after I drink the drug, I will no longer stay with you, but will depart for the happiness of the blessed. That very day his soul would be with, quote, the good and the wise God in a better life. The same fate awaits all who have purified their souls from defilement. Instead of quoting Psalm 21:2 and its reference to divine dereliction, namely, my God, why have you forsaken me? In Luke 1 reads, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. After saying this, he expired. Confidence in God's acceptance here has replaced anguish at God's absence. That is a very important observation. Mark's Jesus thinks God has abandoned him. Luke's Jesus says, I'm coming to the Father. Similarly, in the Phaedo, immediately before taking the poison, Socrates offered a prayer to the gods that his departure may be fortuitous. Thus I pray, and may it come to pass. His final words were, Crito, we owe Asclepius a cock. Pay it and do not forget. Asclepius was the god of healing, and Socrates owed him a sacrifice in gratitude that his soul was being healed through the death of his body. Socrates and Jesus thus prayed and then confidently commended their souls to God. In Luke's Passion, a declaration of innocence has replaced the ironic gloat of the centurion, which Mark probably modeled after the gloat of Achilles over the corpse of Hector. So here we go, Derek. Now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, that's Mark.
Now, when the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying,
Oh, sure, this mortal was a son of a god. He's dead.
Surely this man was righteous.
Now, the Greek expressions are very similar, but instead of saying he's mocking that he's a son of a god, the centurion says, this man is dikaios. Dikaios is the word that is used for Socrates over and over again for being innocent. And this, you see this in both Plato and in Xenophon. Compare this statement of the Luke centurion with the last sentence in the Phaedo. Such was the end, O Echecrates, of our comrade, a man, so we might say, who of all those whom we have tried was the best, the wisest, and the most righteous. Dikaiotatou. It's the comparative, more righteous, but it's still dikaios, the same word that we have in Luke. This defense of Socrates' righteousness underscores the injustice of his execution. Luke's centurion likewise recognized the injustice of Jesus' execution when he said, "Surely this man was dikaios." Just one final thing. In the Phaedo, Socrates is surrounded by his companions, takes the hemlock, and soon dies. Only in Luke does Jesus die on the cross surrounded by his friends. In Mark, the disciples all had left already at Gethsemane. But these people are surrounded. So here we have an intentional argument with the Gospel of Mark inside the Bible by saying the Markan depiction of the death of Jesus is insufficient. And Jesus' death is more like the death of Socrates, the philosopher. And it's not that Jesus thinks God had abandoned him. Rather, he has every confidence that his death is going to be received by his Father, and that he's not going to fear death, and he promises eternal life immediately to the righteous thief. This is really brilliant mimesis, but sorry, friends, this is not history.
Dennis, this is really good. I mean, it's a shock. It's obvious when you read Mark and Matthew. The disciples flee. They run. They're afraid for their lives. They're not near there. And in Luke, they are. You could call that a contradiction if you're trying to say that they somehow match. But if we're reading them as authors with creativity, right, which is not the common thing that I'm engaging with. Usually people are trying to homogenize or harmonize these issues. But these contradict. However, I find it really interesting how they made him like Socrates in so many ways. And there are so many connections in the Greek words. I hope everybody watched, saw those words on the screen, saw the Greek, saw these things, and thought, wow, okay, there's something going on here. This is cool. And this brings me to almost a different question. My mind went here. I asked Paula Fredrickson, what can we be certain about Jesus, historically speaking? And like, what can we be almost certain about? And she said, well, what I would do if I was going to try and figure out something most confident about Jesus historically is I'd look at our Gospels, right? Factor in what the Gospels say and see if they match and line up with Paul. So she's saying, if we can take this and try to line it up with Paul, and she says, I'm almost certain, like the most certain thing we could say is Jesus was crucified. Right. She said, honestly, and it was really good hearing her say this, because some people think maybe she's conservative, maybe she's got a dated scholarship. She said, after that, everything's up for grabs. Everything. That's a powerful thing coming from Paula. Yeah, and I know that you agree. You would say amen to that. Because that's kind of the eureka moment I'm in right now. It's like, I almost want to say, I don't want to put too much on. I mean, sure, he's a Jewish guy, like, of course. And he probably got in trouble, probably. But you wouldn't put too much strength into those categories of what he probably did, as you would say, this guy got crucified. Everything else is up for grabs. Because here we have these stories, and even the earliest one, Mark, is riffing off of the Greek epic. And then Luke wants to go, sure. But in this case, I want Socrates. And there's liberty to take their own views here. So thank you for presenting this, but there's just no way to have him laying down, crying to God, begging, God to take this away from him, to kneeling and having on his knee, to dying in front of his disciples, but not dying in front of his disciples. My God, why have you forsaken me? And then he surely was the Son of God. To this man was innocent, and into your hands I commend my spirit. I mean, like, come on.
I so admire Paula Fredrickson, especially her read on Paul. And for that reason, I wish she were in this room so we could talk about what it was that crucified Jesus. Now, crucifixion obviously is a Roman form of punishment. And it's to make a public statement. It's not like giving people poison like Socrates or beheading them. This is a display. It's a public hanging, if you will. Now, did he offend the Romans, or did he offend Jews? And what kind of Jews might he been offended by? Who would have, had an issue with Jesus. And I can't answer for her. I can answer for myself, but actually that isn't what we're talking about. But yes, I think that's right. When you have the crucifixion, everything's up for grabs. But of course, a historian wants to know, well, why was he crucified? And so that may be a different time to talk. That would take us actually to the Q document, I think, and to Paul's encounter with Judaizers and his attitude toward Judaism himself, because I think that reflects something of the early Jesus movement in Palestine. But that's a different story. But I love how Paula put it. After the crucifixion, everything's up for grabs. And that's what you can see in the Synoptics. They are really struggling to make sense of all this.